Hello and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. Our community focuses on food security, emergency preparedness, and self-reliance. And today, we're going to do food security for sure and emergency preparedness as we talk about the basics of water bath canning. We have a lot of newbies that have come onto this channel recently, and so many of them are commenting on how they are just hungry for correct information about canning, both pressure canning and water bath canning. In just a moment, I will show you that Jim brought in a couple of lugs of peaches for us from a local farmer. They are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. They're freestone, and so the pit just pops right out. One lug is ready to can right now, and so we are going to feature water bath canning basics with peaches, and we'll get started in just a moment. When Jim got home with those peaches, and here is one of these lugs of peaches, and they are spectacularly beautiful. We have canned these peaches before from this farmer. They're very sweet, and as you can see, these are ready. They're just soft to the touch, and some of them have a few little places that we'll need to cut out, and that's normal for canning. Things don't need to be perfect for canning, but you just need to be aware of what to do and how to handle that. I knew immediately that this lug needed to be canned and dealt with, and so I began the process of getting ready. And getting ready for canning is half the battle of canning. And I probably have spent about a half an hour scrambling around, getting things all ready, so I want to show you what I have. In addition to the peaches, we need to slip the skins on the peaches, which means this skin has to come off so that we can get right to the heart of the peach flesh. So I'm going to do that by I'm going to rinse these peaches and put them in here. And I have a pan of boiling water over on the stove, which we will look at in just a moment. But in preparation, I got that boiling so that it would be ready. We're going to put peaches in here, take them over there, let them steam or boil for a couple of minutes to loosen the skins, and then we're going to bring them over and put them in this sink, which is full of cold water. We'll put the peaches in the cold water, I'll slip the skins and show that to you, and then we will begin putting them in the jars. The other thing that I prepared was the actual materials for doing the canning, and that is a canner. If this looks just like a regular kitchen pot to you, that's because it is. You do not need a specialized water bath canning pot. You can do it in anything that will, according to the USDA, hold at least 4 jars, 4 pint jars or 4 quart jars. And so this is a regular stock pot that I have. Now what I have to do is we have to put some kind of a rack in the bottom, because we never ever run a canner with the jars directly on the bottom of the pan. Those jars will break. But my rack is a little bit small. And so, oh my goodness, what could I use? Well, let me show you. In the bottom of this pan, I have just put regular canning rings to act as a rack. And it works perfectly. I can balance those jars on the rack there, and it will be just fine. So because I'm getting close to getting ready, I am going to fill this with water. Now, when we put the jars in, the water has to cover the jars at least an inch so that it can come to a nice rolling boil and not splatter out of the pan. And so I'm going to start that water right now. I'm starting with warm water. With this much water, it probably will not be enough. And so over on the stove, I also have my tea kettle, and that will be filled with boiling water so that I can fill that up if needed. So I'm going to start this on the stove right now. I also have a sharp knife, and work with a knife that you're really comfortable working with. A lot of people would not work with this kind of a knife, so use whatever is good for you. And I have prepared our jars. Now these are wide mouth quart jars. I have washed them in hot soapy water, and I rinsed them and put them here to dry. These lids and rings have also been washed with hot soapy water and rinsed and put here to dry. I am only going to do a batch of 4 quarts this time, and that is because I already have some out on our pantry shelf, and I need to rotate through those before I do too many more. I have some that are 5 years old, I have some that are 3 years old, and now I'm going to put these on here because we rotate through our food storage rather than fixing a whole bunch and hoping it's going to stay good for a whole lot of years. All right, so I also have this little tool in case I need to reach into water and retrieve a peach quickly. So the next thing then is to process these peaches, get the skins off of them. Now I don't necessarily have to rinse these, they actually look pretty clean, but there's just something in me that says please rinse. So I've got cool water now going into the sink so it's not running down the sink at all, and in a moment I'll just be able to use the water that's in the sink. So I'm putting all of these in. I am not taking care of the blemishes at this point. I'm also, as I pick them up, I am feeling for the softness. I want just a little bit of give, otherwise they'll be too hard and not ready for canning. And I don't want to do, that one's not ready. That one's not ready. I don't want to do a whole lot at a time over there. So a couple more, and that's going to be about it. This one's good. This one's good. Okay, so these are going to go over in the steamer. The other thing that I have ready in this pot on the stove is my syrup that I'm going to be pouring over the peaches once we get the syrup in the pan. Now, because these peaches are really sweet, I do not use a heavy syrup. In fact, I never use a heavy syrup. I don't want all that sugar. So my syrup, and you can follow the recipes that the USDA gives, or you can just do your own. I think mine is even a little lighter than what you can use, just plain water, or you can use just a light syrup. So I have 2 quarts of water to a half a cup of sugar there. When I was growing up and canning peaches with my mother, I was the oldest child, and so I was always majorly involved with all the canning. And I'm oldest of 9 children, and it was a family lineup. We did several hundred jars of canned fruit every single summer. And the little kids would be responsible for bringing the fruit in to the big kids, who would then do their part. And then Mother was the one that always put it in the jar, so we just had this assembly line going. Now, what I like about an assembly line is, even though I am one person, I set up my canning process so that once I get actually going on the canning part, it just goes like clockwork. So that's what I'm going to try to model today if something doesn't go awry, which sometimes it does. Canning peaches is a very drippy business, and oh my goodness, I better take my watch off actually. I remember as a child having that peach juice dripping off the end of my elbows. I hated it, but I'm glad I have the skill. So once we get the peaches over here, we'll slip the skins, put the skins in this sink, put the peaches up here. Then I will, with my paring knife, cut the peaches in half, cut out any blemishes, and get them in the jar. When the jars are filled, then we'll pour the syrup in, and then we'll get them in the canner. So that's what we hope to do. So I'm going to check the peaches. Because it's been 3 years since I have canned peaches, I always double check the USDA home guide, complete guide to home canning, and this is available online. You can look at it free online, or you can buy the booklet like I have done. And just to make sure that I am doing everything right, because I am a very careful canner. Now, We can either do raw pack or hot pack. All my life I have done raw pack. I think that that is the easiest. That is what I'm going to demonstrate today. Hot pack is where you put the peaches in the hot syrup first, and then boil that a little bit, and then you put the whole mixture in the jars. I put the fruit in the jar first. This is raw pack. Fruit in the jar first, and then cover with the syrup. So that's what we're going to do. All right, our peaches are ready. I'm going to bring them over. And now here comes the skin slipping part. And if you're really lucky, the skin is just going to come off just like that. And USDA says 30 to 60 seconds. I've never been able to get skin slip like that in that short a time. So I probably had them in there about 3 minutes, which means that the outsides are a little bit, tiny bit cooked, but that's okay. Okay, so after I slip the skins, then I'm going to cut them in half because that's how I can them. This one is okay. Doesn't need any pits taken out, any bad spots taken out, and I'm going to pop the pit and then put them in here. And so I'm going to continue doing this. Here's one with some blemishes, so let me show you how I get those, and then I'll probably do the rest of these off camera. So I'm just going to go in here right just like this and get that little blemish. Use that to help cut it in half. And in go the pits. USDA says to put skin cut side down. I don't spend a lot of time trying to get the cut sides down. You know, if they go cut side down, sweet and dandy. There's a piece of skin on that one. And if not, oh well. So I just slide them in. I don't push. These are peach halves rather than peach slices. I pound them down just a little bit. And I make sure that even though this one comes up a little bit, there's still plenty of room for head space. With raw pack, we want the syrup to be very hot. Now the jars have been at room temperature. The peaches came out of the boiling water, so they're a little bit warm. We're going to be putting these in a canner where the water is just simmering. 1 inch headspace right there. Checking for air bubbles. I see an air bubble right there. Replenish the syrup. Wipe the rims. Lid. Ring finger tight. I don't want to put this one in the canner. I don't want it to cook longer than the rest, so I'm just going to put it right back over here, and we will continue doing this until I get 4 quarts ready, and then we'll come back. Another thing I want to share is that these are not perfect. They're not coming off all the way perfect. I'm cutting pieces out of them, and oh my, it destroys the symmetry if I cut a little spot out like I'm going to do right here. Ask me if I care. I don't care. This is still really good food. It might have a little ding in it, but that's okay. But I wanted to show you that these are, I did not quite leave them in the water the same amount of time. I tested earlier and found that they were ready. And so this is more like showing what you want. Now, when you get to a stubborn spot, this little spot right here probably was up above the boiling water. And so if you just have to take your paring knife and peel the skin off by hand, do it. That's just fine. And so these are just about ready. There's a spot, so I'm going to cut that spot out. And then this skin is slipping beautifully. So we'll finish up this quart. Lid and ring finger tight. If you have not seen our video on what finger tight means. We've just made a short little micro moment video. It's about 5 minutes long on how to do this, so you can look at that. Okay, now this jar of peaches, there's one that does not have the cut side facing down. Oh well, it's going to go in the canner just that way anyway. Okay, so I want to show you how I put these in the canner. Now, at this point in time, you have your choice about what kind of a canner you are wanting to use. Those of you that have the electric canners like the Presto that will hold, these are wide mouth, so it will hold 4 wide mouth. That may be your choice. It would not be my choice. For me, the Presto for water bath canning, it takes way too many steps. I have my pot of water, it is simmering over there. Now, if I'm feeling these jars, they feel to the touch, they feel warm because of that warm syrup. And so I'm putting warm jars in water that is just simmering. I'm not going to start the timing until it comes to a rolling boil. I will make sure that the water is up over the top. We're going to do all that when we get over here. I will always opt for doing water bath canning in a regular pot. The messy part, the hard part is now done. And so the easiest part in the world for me is to pop these in a pot on my stove, and then nothing is easier than water bath canning. So let's go over to this pot and we'll go from here. So I'm just going to put these down and I'm going to straddle those rings, and so it is up on the rings. And so far the water hasn't touched my fingers, thankfully. The water has been simmering. Okay, now I still need some water, so I've had water boiling right over here in my tea kettle. And I do that for this very reason. I'm going to now fill this with very hot water, boiling water, up above at least an inch. And now I'm going to turn the heat up so that it will now get started. Now at this point in time, all that needs to happen is that the jars need to be covered, completely submerged in boiling water, because we want the temperature of the food to get up to about 180 degrees, and it will do that if it is in boiling water. But for how long? Well, in the book that I showed earlier, for our elevation, which is 5,000 feet, we have to add an extra 5 minutes, and so it is 30 minutes plus 5 minutes, 35 minutes for quarts. And you can put the lid on or not, but don't tell anybody, because the only thing that the lid does is just prevent evaporation. It doesn't make it hotter in there. It doesn't make it boil any differently. It's still going to boil. Now, you don't need to boil it so hard that it's splashing out everywhere. As long as it comes to a nice rolling boil, that's all you need, and it needs to stay in that boiling water for 35 minutes, and then we're done. And that's all there is to it. So we'll come back when this is boiling at the right speed, and I'll show you what that looks like. This has been boiling for about 3 minutes, just at the very right level. So that's what a good boil looks like on water bath canning. The water is an inch above the jars. The bubbles are coming up all around the jars. I'm going to put the lid back on, and my timer is set. And so nothing could be easier. It's going to take another 30 minutes or so before these are ready to come out. Once the timing is over, I'm going to turn the heat off and let them sit in there for a couple of minutes so we don't get siphoning. And then we'll pull them out. And siphoning we also talked about in our previous video, along with finger tight. And then we'll show you what they look like when they come out. Now, for water bath canning, we don't need to get it up. Botulism is not a concern, but there are other types of bacteria that do attack high acid foods, and so those are killed at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's why we put it in a water bath canner for a long enough period as determined by the USDA. So we'll see you when these are done. Time finished up just a couple of minutes ago. I took the lid off and they've been sitting in there under 5 minutes. With water bath canning, siphoning isn't such an issue. Look how beautiful that is. That water turns that syrup turns just a little bit of a rose color. It picks that up from where the pit was. But now we have 4 beautiful jars of peaches. And we had minimal siphoning, it looks like. And even if we did have some siphoning, they would still be fine, so long as the siphoning didn't take more than half of the syrup. So they are just lovely. So what we have accomplished with this is preserving this food, and everybody always wants to know, well, how long is it good for? How long is it good for? At the beginning of the video, you may have caught that I stated that I have some out in our food storage area that are now 5 years old. And we had one of those just the other day, and they're still perfectly good. So we plan to rotate through everything. I canned a whole bunch in 5 years ago, and so we're eating those first, but now that supply is dwindling down. So I'm slowly building it up again. So I have some that are 3 years old, and now all I need to add is these for 4 more, and we still have a year's supply of peaches out there. And so it's really good to rotate through to keep food as fresh as possible. So these are the basics of water bath canning. It's a very simple process. Is, from my perspective, as easy as anything on the market out there, just to do it right on your stovetop. So I hope that this has been useful to you, and we will see you with our next video.